What's up, guys? It's Travis coming at you again from Cultivate and CultivateColorado.com here in Denver. If you tuned in last week, you might have saw part 1 of our Commercial Cultivators Seminar, and in that video we had Matt from Front Row Ag talking about their entire nutrient line and their new products coming out, the best way to use everything. If you're somebody who's interested in growing with quote-unquote salt nutrients like powders instead of liquid nutrients, definitely check that video out to learn more. They're one of the best powder lines on the market. This video is going to be part 2 of that Commercial Cultivator Seminar featuring Zach from BioSafe. BioSafe makes some of the best products for keeping your grow room clean and sanitized between cycles or during growth, and a bunch of other products too that are extremely useful in the grow. So you definitely want to check that out. This one's a little longer than the first one, but there's just that much more information in it. If you want to learn any more about these products, the links to them will be in the description, and we'll see you in the next one.
I am Zach the Grow Guy, and I work for BioSafe Systems. This is kind of our presentation on utilizing our chemistries so that you guys can have clean, chemistry, clean crops, and good results. Our core technology at BioSafe is going to be a compound called PAA, or peroxyacetic acid. And basically, guys, what we've done is taken H2O2 and put it on steroids. What PAA is literally glacial grade acetic acid, which is vinegar, and peroxide that we've stabilized in solution. And the reason that we do this is so that we can ensure that we have a much higher level of sanitation when you guys are actually doing your sprays. Regular H2O2 is great, but the minute you mix it up and it starts bubbling, that's your ORP, or oxidation reduction potential, going down. So basically all that means is that you guys are against the clock. The longer that stuff sits in solution, the less efficacy you're going to get out of that spray. By throwing the PAA into the mix, we can ensure that even if it takes your guy 5 hours to do his application, he's going to have a comparable level of sanitation that entire time, because again, that PAA is only going to break down when it comes in contact with a contaminant. But it breaks down into oxygen and water, just like H2O2, so it's a very high level chemistry with zero residual. We have a commitment to sustainability at BioSafe. We want to make sure that anything that we're putting out for cultivators is going to not only give them results, but not harm the environment. We have many products that don't have any harmful residue, so they're safe to be used throughout the entire cultivation process. We have product recycling programs where if you have an old jug of xylitol and you're not sure if it's still viable, we can actually reformulate it, add the PAA back into it, and make it so that it is still a product that you can use. We've got strategic manufacturing all over the contiguous United States, so we make sure that if you guys order something, it's going to show up at your door as fresh as it possibly can. It doesn't need to sit on a container. It's not manufactured overseas. We are a US-based manufacturer, and we are technology-driven. When we put out a new product, we want to make sure that it's not just going to be a competitor product. We do have some similar formulations, but we always put some innovation into that product to set it aside or set it apart from the competitor products that are, possibly available. We do have a commitment to compliance. We work with all of the major regulatory agencies here in the US to make sure that we have things like OMRI certification, CDFA. Basically, we want to ensure that our products are going to be as clean for the applicator as they can be, but also provide a clean end product to your users. If we're spraying something on there that could make somebody sick, then it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. We're ensuring that you guys are not only getting results, but you're not compromising the integrity of your product by doing so. We do have tried and true real world results. As many of you guys that are sitting here tonight can attest to, our products really do work, and they are an industry standard in cannabis. We have the ability to do everything from crop protection, so we can go after pathogens and insects that could be affecting your crop. We have some superior sanitation chemistries that allow you guys to basically adhere to FDA standards for food safety claims, even though it's not mandated in cannabis yet, guys. Everything we grow is either eaten, smoked, or rubbed on somebody's skin. So food safety standards are coming. And being able to use some of our products are going to allow you guys to adhere to those standards when they get set forth. And the thing about cannabis to remember is it's famous for retroactive enforcement. Just because what you're doing today is okay, doesn't mean it's going to be okay tomorrow if they decide it's not. And it would be very unfortunate for you guys to have to remediate an entire garden to, hash or something because of the fact that that food safety standard wasn't in place while that crop was growing. Any filamentous algae, cyanobacteria, zoospore that could be in your water column, we can address that effectively. And by doing so with our PAA, not only are we, getting rid of those fungal spores, but we're getting some dissolved oxygen into the root zone from just the product going through that degradation process. And DO is a good thing for the roots. So you do get an added benefit beyond just the sanitation. Anytime I have a grower that is dealing with any type of issue, I always try to talk to them about the pathogen triangle, because this has to exist in this formulation for a infestation or an issue to become a problem. Obviously, we need a susceptible host, and there needs to be some time that passes, but a conducive environment is just as important as the regimen that we're using to go after said pathogen. If we have a room that is consistently high with humidity and we can't control the temps, I don't care how much we spray, that powdery mildew is going to keep coming back because that environment is such to where mold and mildew is going to grow there. So anytime that we're dealing with any issues, we have to make sure that we are, addressing it from many different angles, not just spraying our problem away, but looking at our cultural practices and our environment to basically say, hey, what else can we change to basically try to, get ahead of said issue. Obviously, there are many different methods of IPM. IPM does stand for Integrated Pest Management, so this is kind of encompassing all of it, but your mechanical and physical IPM, that's going to be in, basically removing plant material, making sure that you're scouting properly, making sure that, when you guys are actually in there doing your sprays, they're going to be effective. Your biological controls are going to be like your insects and your entomopathogenic funguses that will be able to target certain things in the environment. Your cultural practices, like going into your cleanest rooms first, not coming from a dirty grow and then going into a clean area, not bringing in plants and just throwing them straight into production without a quarantine, washing your hands. There's little things that add up to big results, and that's where cultural can really come into play. And then BioSafe, we would be the chemical aspect of IPM, where you guys are physically putting out chemistries to be able to deal with said issues that could be, arose in the grow. Our products can be used throughout the entire process. Our TerraGrow and Xeritol 2.0 are awesome to be able to get things started. The TerraGrow is a microbial inoculant that I'll go into a little bit here. And our Xeritol is our workhorse of the industry. It's going to be used from everything from water treatment to plant disinfection. You can even clean your rooms with it if you want. But typically we recommend that you guys actually go with the Sanidate for your hard surfaces, because again, that food safety claim aspect, even though Xeritol and Sanidate are similar chemistries, the Sanidate label is the one that has the human health pathogens on it. So for you to adhere to that food safety standard from the FDA, you have to use Sanidate to disinfect. If you're a commercial grower, hear that. If you're a smaller grower, you can use Xeritol for both. In veg, obviously we would like you to use the Azagard. It's going to be our jab in the 1-2 combo when we're going after any insects. It does some really key things for us to allow us to make sure that our next spray is going to be much more effective. We've got our BioSeries WP, which is a Bavaria bassiana, very effective against soft-bodied insects. Anybody that's dealt with root aphids, I'm sure, is familiar with Bavaria. Our formulation, as I'll go into it, it's superior to some of the other stuff that's on the market. Our Calox FT, which is a really cool new product that we've come out with, and it's basically a calcium mobilization technology. It has a compound in it, guys, called diphenylurea, and basically it allows us to cheat how we move calcium through the plant. We are able to open up the chloride channels in between the cells and push calcium via the symplastic pathway. Typically, calcium takes something called the epiplastic pathway, and it's a slow process. When we use this DPU, we can equalize calcium throughout the entire plant. Calcium is essential for many, many things, but having the ability to just increase your cell wall thickness is going to give you guys better dry weight. So, if you're harvesting more, that's a no-brainer. The Oxyphos is an awesome conglomeration of H2O2 and something called mono and dipotassium salt of phosphoric acid. It's literally a PK molecule that the plant can't regulate the uptake on, and so it causes something called an induced systemic response. That product is awesome for powdery mildew because we can actually target the root of the problem. It goes after the hyphal network, and so we're not just spraying that mycelium and see it coming back in like 5 to 7 days. And then our BT Now is going to be used predominantly for like outdoor grows. It's a Bacillus thuringiensis kerstaki. Basically, it's a BT that when caterpillars eat it, it creates this enzyme in their midgut. It's almost like drinking Quickcrete. Nothing can go in, nothing can go out. You'll see the caterpillars persist for a couple more days, but they're not eating anything. The plant damage goes way down, and they basically just die off after that. You want to use it as soon as you see caterpillars, because they not only are going to cause damage to the crop from their feeding, but they also defecate where they're eating. And so 9 out of 10 times, if you guys see caterpillars, you're going to see botrytis too. And so by getting ahead of it and being able to mitigate the amount that they're actually able to affect your plants is going to cut down on that crop loss on the back end as well. And then we got our Sanidate 5, which I talked about a little bit, to mix with the Biofoamer and Green Clean Alkaline Cleaner. Basically, that's for our reset stage. The Sanidate and Biofoamer is going to be used on any hard surfaces that aren't a soft metal, a sensor, or a bulb. The nice thing about it is it's a zero rinse requirement. So you guys could literally break a room down, foam it, go to lunch, let that 1 hour REI lapse, and then come back and reset the room. It's a minimal loss of productivity. You don't have to rinse it after the fact. And so you guys are able to basically bang out an entire room in terms of fully sanitized, FDA required food safety, and still have a new crop in there in less than 24 hours. Our chemistries, the biggest thing that I run into with guys wanting to use our stuff is they want to use RO water in their sprays. And we really recommend that you stay away from RO water, because RO water, guys, is basically dead water. We filtered all the bicarbonate content out of it, and RO is caustic in its own nature by itself. Even though it comes out of our machine at 7.0, we let it sit for 24 hours, it's going to be a pH of 5.5. Then we add something like xylitol to it that's got that peroxyacetic acid. It's a weak acid, but it's an acid, so it's going to drop that pH. And if you don't have anything in that water column for that acid to interact with, and then you try to pH it back up, that potassium hydroxide and peroxyacetic acid are basically just going to cancel each other out. And you guys made very expensive water at that point. If you have the ability to use tap water, that's preferable. But if you have dirty tap water, what I tell growers to do is basically spike their RO with some base NPK. If you're in a veg cycle, use your veg newts. If you're an early flower, use your flower newts, and that way we're still going to be basically feeding the plant, but we have enough of a bicarbonate content present in that water column to where when we add that xylitol, it's not going to bottom out. And so you guys kind of get a 2-for-1 shot. You're going to get a little bit of foliar nutrition while still being able to sanitize your canopy. Tank mixing is your best friend. A lot of our chemistries are tank mix compatible, and if you have the ability to do more than one product in one go, it just makes sense because you're able to cover more bases that way. So, doing the research and making sure that your sprays are compatible and are complementary is really going to allow you guys to maximize your efficiency. With our gear, PPE is essential. This isn't a 25B style chemistry where you can spray it in shorts. It does have the ability to burn your hands. Xylitol is a EPA registered fungicide, guys, so it's the real deal. That being said, the PPE that's required for it is pretty, minimal, all things considered. There is no respirator requirement. If you guys want to wear one, I say go for it, but it's not actually on the label. We need you to have eye protection, and that's what I stress more than anything, because if you get xylitol on your hands, it hurts, but that skin's going to slough off and you'll be okay in a couple days. If you get the concentrate in your eyes, you will go blind. And so make sure before you guys ever mix any concentrate, at the very least, please, please, please put on goggles or eye protection or something to be able to keep you seeing tomorrow, so to speak. But yeah, long pants, waterproof shoes, socks, and you're good to go. We always want to see people clean before they try to sanitize. You can't sanitize a dirty environment. So when we go in and foam a room when we're done, we want to make sure that we've gone through to remove any leaf debris or cocoa or anything that could have been left over from that last grow, because if we sanitize a pile of cocoa, that cocoa pile got sanitized, but whatever's underneath it is still going to be dirty. So we want to make sure that we get all the debris out of there first, and then go in with the Sanidate and basically foam everything up, and then set it and forget it. Come back in an hour and you're good to go. Again, we do have OMRI listing on a lot of our products. The only one that will be sold into cannabis that isn't organic certified is going to be our Oxyphos. And that's just because organic phosphoric acid isn't a thing, guys. We can't make that product and have it be OMRI certified. But we do a lot of grower support, and we've got a lot of resources. I got promoted in April to the National Cannabis Specialist, so more than likely I'm gonna be the guy that you guys are dealing with if you have questions. But I've got an entomologist on staff, Dr. Gretchen Pettis, up in the PNW. So if you guys ever have questions about insect identification, we can help you narrow that down. We've got a couple PhDs that are good at water treatment, so if we ever have a disease that we're not sure what it is, BioSafe can also do a water test for you, just like Front Row. And we'll basically tell you, hey, this is what's in the water column, this is the dilution rate you need to use to address said pathogen, and allow a grower to have an educated route forward instead of just kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. We really do believe that rotations are crucial to any grower success. A lot of times, people that have persistent problems aren't mixing up the products that they're using, and it's one of those things where Mother Nature is much better at this than we are, and she's going to develop a resistance if we do the same thing over and over and over. And so the idea is to know what pests that we're targeting, know their life cycle length, and then basically put together a schedule to where they're not going to be exposed to a chemistry maybe more than once or twice in their life cycle. And by doing so, the likelihood of them developing a resistance to what we're putting out is minimized exponentially. And complete coverage is crucial. If you guys aren't spraying every surface in that grow, we're going to miss something. And the reason that I bring that up is because a lot of times I will see growers spray at night or under green lights, and that is not the most advisable way to do it. If you've got a green light and you're spraying, you're only going to see what's directly in front of you. There's a really good chance you're probably going to miss some stuff. The other thing is, just like these plants don't know they're growing inside, neither do these insects. And so when the lights go off, they're going to go to sleep. They're going to hide. It's going to be harder to get complete coverage. If we let those lights come on, they wake up, it's daytime, let's go to work, so to speak. They're going to be out, they're going to be active, and our sprays are going to be that much more effective because we're not going to have the guys hiding out, so to speak. So our Azagard is the, I want to say, cornerstone to any insect mitigation program that you guys may have. It's going to do some really key things for you to make sure that anything else you do is going to be that much more successful. It's an anti-feedant, it's a growth regulant, and it's an ovicide. And knowing those three things, we can target our approach to basically make sure that we're taking away the food source from the insects. So not only are we lessening the damage to our crop, but we're weakening them. Because if they're not eating, they're going to not be firing on all cylinders, and they're going to be easier to get rid of. It's a growth regulant. So when it comes in contact with a population, if they can't get to that mature phase, they're not laying eggs or giving live birth. So we've cut down that subsequent week's infestation exponentially, because if they can't get to that phase to procreate, they're not gonna. And the other key benefit to it is it's an ovicide. So if there's adult females that are already present in that population, round numbers sake, if they lay 10 eggs but only one hatches, again, that's 90% less of an infestation we're dealing with that subsequent week. And so we start out, basically the rotation with the Azagard. It's a 3% azadirachtin, controls over 400 different insect species. Again, it has multiple modes of action. It's MPS color code white, which doesn't mean anything to you guys, but basically that is the safest code you can have for this style of chemistry. And it is tank mix compatible with Oxyphos and Xeritol 2.0. If you guys have looked at the cannabis program that we put together, we actually recommend that every 3 weeks you're mixing in the Oxyphos with the Xeritol and Azagard so that we can get that induced systemic response and basically keep the plants on a optimal level of health to where things like powdery mildew, botrytis, pythium aren't ever able to establish themselves. Again, it's the best way to start your IPM attack. You're going to see much better control and results when Azagard is part of your rotation. The anti-feedant, IGR, and ovicidal properties make this an invaluable tool for you guys. There are a lot of different azadirachtin formulations on the market. What makes ours unique, guys, is we're the only ones that actually make it here in the US. Everybody else bottles it over in India where neem grows. And the reason that's kind of important is late 2017, early 2018, the state of Oregon went through their entire approved list and basically tested everything so that they could say what's on the label is what's in the bottle. And they found that the majority of the azadirachtin chemistries contained other chemistries. And why it wasn't a malicious thing by these other companies, But if you guys have ever seen pictures of India, there's no quality control over there. If that guy has 20 bottles that he needs to run chemistries on, he's not getting in the hopper with a mop in between. And that's important because if you guys are utilizing a product that could potentially be contaminated, you get all the way to harvest and they say, well, there's bifenthrin in here. And you can say, I never use bifenthrin. That doesn't matter. They're still gonna fine you for that. And that crop is gonna be destroyed. We've got dedicated lines in Sparks, Nevada. The only thing that ever goes through it is Azagard. So there's never a risk of cross-contamination. And we don't use ethanol or petroleum in our formulation. So it's very safe for root zone applications. Have any of you guys ever used Azamax before?
Oh, yeah.
You know how it turns that milky white color when you mix it up? That tells you that they use ethanol to extract those liminoids in that process. And ethanol is a solvent in a situation where we could have root damage already present. If we throw a solvent on top of that, we could exacerbate, the situation and make it that much worse. So having a soft inert package in the Azagard, it's sorbate and saponin. Sorbate is a stabilizer they put in ice cream. Saponins are derived from yucca, so they're food grade inerts. It's the safest chemistry you guys could use for this set application. Typically, we like to see you guys use it at between 4 to 6 ml per gallon. It is compatible with any IPM rotation. It interrupts their molt cycle, making them harder for the insects to establish. Like I said, it takes away their food source, makes them weaker. And this is the most important part, guys. They did a study with 30 generations of peach aphids, and there was no documented resistance that was ever seen with Azagard. The next product I'm going to talk about just real quick is our Axe broad spectrum herbicide. This is really good for growers that have greenhouses or field grows. It's basically an ammonium nanoate soap that does not translocate or volatilize. So this is very good for field grows or, to be used around desirable plants. Axe only kills what it touches. So if you guys have a field and you've got weeds growing around your desirable crop, you hit those weeds, it's gonna kill that stuff, but it's not gonna touch your actual, cannabis plants. As long as you don't hit the foliage with it, there is no translocation, there is no volatilization. So it's a lot easier than, getting on your hands and knees and picking weeds all day long. The other really nice thing about it, guys, is that it has, here's a picture of what it does to a dandelion. As you can see, necrosis, rapid burn down. I think this was after 12 hours of application. Right here, insect control on unwanted vegetation. If you guys spray your perimeters with Axe, not only are you going to eliminate any of the buffer zone, so to speak, that those insects could be living in, but ammonium nanoate is also very effective against soft-bodied insects. So if there's any thrips or aphids, whiteflies, anything living in those weeds on the periphery, not only are we killing the weeds, taking away that conducive environment, but we're also attacking the pest. Here is just a picture of a 4-hour time lapse at 6%. As you can see, the one on the right is starting to wilt pretty heavy. Our BT Now was the product I was talking about for caterpillar control. It is a Bacillus thuringiensis kerstaki. It's got a 4-hour RE dye with a 0-day pre-harvest interval. It's got low resistance potential. And again, it deters feeding damage by creating that protease enzyme in their midgut. Quickcrete for caterpillars. They eat it and nothing can come in, nothing can go out. And it is also pollinator friendly, so you don't have to worry about any bee toxicity with the product. It's an innovative take on an industry standard. The BTK is nothing new, but the water-based formulation is something that's relatively new to the industry. It used to be a wettable powder, and the problem with it is it settles. And so growers would say halfway through my application, I'd have to take the tank and re-agitate the hell out of it to get the spray to be what I wanted it to be. With the water-based formulation, it's going to solubilize very easily. And we've actually done a study in, it was South Carolina at this place called the Hemp Mine, where we used Bacillus thuringiensis kerstaki and a beneficial insect called a trichogramma wasp. And when they're used in conjunction, the Lepidoptera control that you guys are able to achieve is unlike anything else. We basically showed that trichogramma has it parasitizes eggs of over 200 different species of moths and caterpillars. The BT Now goes after the caterpillars that have already hatched. The most important part is timing the trichogramma release for good efficacy. We typically want BT Now applied every 3 to 7 days after the moths first lay eggs and the new larvae start to emerge. That would be the key time. But it is effective against corn earworm, budworm, ballworm, borer, Heliotheus forensis, pretty much anything that would be like a caterpillar chewing on your crop, this stuff will take care of. Our next product is our BioSeries WP. It's an entomopathogenic fungus that basically targets soft-bodied insects very effectively. The spore itself will adhere to the carapace of an insect, and then it puts a hyphae, similar to like what powdery mildew does to a leaf, into the carapace of said insect, and it starts to create an infection called white muscardine disease. And when you see aphids or thrips or whatever insects you're targeting, when they look white like that, that's showing you that not only has the product, worked and we had efficacy out of our initial application, but that's actually secondary sporulation. It's not as good as doing a secondary application, but having some residual, activity on the leaf tissue is to your benefit. Anytime we can have something give us more than just 5 hours worth of work, so to speak, it's going to be, a superior product for us to use. There are a few different Bavarias that are on the market, but what sets ours apart from the other ones, we've got the largest sporangia available. The ANT03 subspecies is much larger than what the competitors have to offer. Larger spore means more instance of us actually making contact with said insect and perpetuating the infection. We don't use any petroleum distillate in our formulation. The competitor product does. I don't know if you guys have ever drenched with Botanigard, but you can typically notice that you're gonna have like 2 to 3 days of droop after that occurs. And the reason for that is the petroleum distillate carrier that they put in that product actually creates a hydrophobic layer on the outside of the root and it keeps it from uptaking water because it's oil. Oil and water don't mix. Our carrier is soy-based, so there's no risk of us causing that hydrophobic action to occur. We also throw a UV inhibitor in our formulation so that when you guys do a canopy-based application, it stays viable for a longer period. The competitor product, you get about maybe 4 hours of longevity out of an application. With ours, it's closer to 12. So if you can get 12 hours of longevity out of a single spray, 2/3 more activity, the likelihood of us making that infection just goes up exponentially. When it is used in conjunction with like our Azagard and a couple different myco-insecticides, you guys can target things like rice root aphid very effectively and eliminate them. Little slide on how the BioSeries WP works. As you can see, the spore adheres to the happy little insect guy there. It puts the hyphae down into his body. He's not so happy anymore, he dies, and then all those secondary spores come through the carapace and you do have a degree of secondary inoculation that can occur. Our Calox FT is the product that I am the most excited about lately because of the ability to basically push calcium throughout the entire plant. It utilizes a compound called diphenylurea, which is basically an auxin mimicker, guys. Auxins are a plant hormone that is kind of allowed to cheat, so to speak, and it's already through the Casparian strip. So when we utilize this product, we're able to push calcium through a pathway that it would never normally take. And by equalizing calcium throughout the entire plant, we're gonna improve plant vigor, strengthening our cell walls, we're gonna have better dry weight. And anecdotally, there are some growers that have been dealing with hop latent viroid. And from what we've been able to kind of learn about HLV, it creates a compound in the plant that basically steals calcium and zinc away from the plant. The constituents in Calox FT are calcium nitrate and zinc oxide. Swear to God, we didn't do that on purpose. But it's literally putting back into the plant what this virus is, basically causing to be taken away. And if there's anything cool about hop latent viroid, guys, it's that latent portion of it. It means that we can actually get it to a dormant stage and to where we can get the plant, vigor to a point where it's almost out competing that viral growth. It's not a cure, so please don't take this as a be-all, end-all, but if you guys have a situation where there could be a potentially infected crop, it's going to allow you to harvest something that actually has decent terpene profile, decent potency to it, instead of just stuff that looks like it finished in week 7 and needs to go straight to hash. Calox FT allows the grower to evenly disperse calcium throughout the whole plant. improves health, vigor, dry weight into the harvest by creating thicker cell walls. It's a unique chemistry that's a game changer for many cultivators. And again, the importance of calcium, as you guys know, strengthens cell walls. It's vital for cell membrane integrity and function. It avoids localized cell collapse that's associated with a deficiency. It acts as an intercellular messenger. And standard calcium has poor mobility. When we're going through that epiplastic pathway, it's going to accumulate in the oldest growth first, and that's why sometimes we will see those deficiencies. The best analogy I can think for Calox is think if we had 5 glasses that were on a table and there was a little pipe to all those glasses, all we would need to do is fill up that first glass, and those other 5 are going to have equal amounts because of that pipe on the bottom. Same way Calox works to disperse calcium within the plant. If it's available, it's going to push it to where it needs to go. Again, just a little slide on the CAT technology, how we're able to use the epiplastic pathway and go through instead of around. And then, you guys are basically able to see how it is kind of bypassing the Casparian strip right there. And this was actually a study that we did with mustard greens, where it was just regular calcium nitrate foliar sprayed on the top. As you can see, it had very poor mobility. We added the DPU to the one on the bottom, and as you can see, there's calcium in every single part of that plant. One of our other new products that's kind of cool that we recently came out with is a product called Garda. It's a bactericide, fungicide that utilizes thyme oil. We have basically taken thyme oil and standardized it to get the thymol out of it at a 3%. Thymol is the active in thyme oil that's going to be responsible for bacterial and fungal disruption. And the cool thing about the Garda is that we actually have a special polymer that we put in there called Hold It. And the Hold It polymer allows us to basically extend the window that thymol is going to have efficacy. Typically with a thyme oil based product, you're going to get maybe 3 to 5 days longevity out of your application. With the Hold It tech, you guys get at least 14 days of residual protection from it. I wouldn't necessarily want you guys to use this product in later flower, but for veg, propagation, and stages where bacterial issues can be a concern, this is a great tool for you guys. Again, thyme oil is very broad spectrum against fungi, bacteria, and viruses. It's biochemically active, and it is tolerance exempt. It is the first EPA-registered fungicide that actually has a standardized thyme oil in it. Again, the active ingredient is 3% thyme, 1% thymol content. And the mode of action is it basically does cell wall destruction, telomerase inhibition, and membrane damage. And there's a very low risk of anything developing a resistance to it because of how it works. As you guys can see, it literally breaks the cell membrane so that it can't go through mitosis, and it just stops the process. We've got an awesome product for algae and water treatment. I don't know if you guys have any source water holding ponds or greenhouses, but we've got something called Green Clean Pro. It's a granular peroxide that basically is activated once we get it wet. So for greenhouse applications, we would go through a fertilizer spreader, basically get it on any of the areas that had algae, get it wet, let it foam, go in there with a hose, wash the algae off, and it's gone. For surface water, we also have the ability to basically treat for filamentous algae, cyanobacteria, or zoospore, but it is safe for aquatic life. So, it is a good option for some folks. A couple years ago, I don't know if you guys remember that algae bloom that was going on at the Aurora Reservoir, but they actually cleaned that up with Green Clean Pro. And as you guys can see on the left there, that's untreated versus right is the treated. Here's a little bit of the green clean in action. It goes from green, gnarly algae to new concrete. You just got to rinse it off. And it does give you, a little bit of residual protection because of how well it does clean. That photo on the right is 3 months after they did an application. For any of our guys that are running irrigation systems, we've got a product called Green Clean Acid Cleaner. It's basically going to be the first step in a reset for your irrigation system. It is a sulfuric acid and surfactant blend that basically works like sandpaper inside our lines. So if there's any bioburden or mineral scale that's accumulated during the run, we're basically able to rough it up, create more surface area on it, so that when we follow up with our secondary shock with the Sanidate, we're able to permeate into all those deposits and break them loose. The more surface area we can create on a deposit, the better something like Sanidate is going to work. Here's just a quick little thing how we like to see it done. We like the green clean acid at 1 to 100. Basically let it sit for 1 to 2 hours. Flush the system with 2 times the amount of clear water that it'll hold. And then our step 2 is the sanitation step. We would fill it up again with Sanidate, 1 to 100, a minimum of 3 hours. But if you guys can let it sit overnight, that's the best bang for your buck. Here's just basically a quick cut of what we were able to do with an irrigation line and how much we reduced the biomass and aerobic bacteria. On the left side, as you guys could see, dirty pipe. On the right side, it was treated. It had that 33% reduction in biomass. And then with the Sanidate being added in there as well, we had 100% reduction in aerobic bacteria. Our Green Clean alkaline cleaner is basically going to be a step 1 for anything else that's not an irrigation system. So your tables, your trays, your walkways, basically anything that isn't a soft metal, a sensor, or a bulb, we can use the alkaline cleaner on first. Again, we can't sanitize a dirty environment. So this is step 1. We go in, put alkaline cleaner on everything. Step 2, we go through and rinse it all off with the Sanidate, and we are able to basically maximize our efficiency again by not having to do that rinse after the fact with the Sanidate. As you guys can see on the left, those trays were steamed. On the right, they were treated with the Green Clean alkaline cleaner. The ones on the right look brand new. And the reason this is important, guys, is because if we have issues that perpetuate from grow to grow or from crop to crop, it's our fault. If we're stubbing your toe on the same rock twice, who do you blame for that? And here's some actual crops being grown in the said trays. The ones on the left were steamed again. You can see a few more empty sites than the ones on the right that were disinfected with Sanidate and Green Clean alkaline. And then again, just another example, steamed versus disinfected and treated. So our oxyphos, guys, this is one of my favorite chemistries that we have because of the fact that it does have longevity in the plant. It's basically a conglomeration of a compound called potassium phosphite and hydrogen peroxide. And what this product is able to do is not only sanitize any mycelium that could be on the leaf surface, but it's almost like giving the plant a flu shot. That ISR response is basically going to put the plant into a defensive posture where it's going to create its own enzymes and terpenes that are responsible for plant defense, while at the same time lowering that cellular pH of that tissue just enough to where that hyphal network from that powdery mildew, it's not a conducive environment for it. So if we almost think of PM like a dandelion, if you cut a dandelion off at ground level, every time it comes back, it's a little more established, a little bit more voracious because we didn't do anything to the roots. We have to go after the root of the problem, quite literally. And by addressing that, your PM is going to be, knocked back exponentially, and you can get it to a point where you're not seeing it anymore. And the longevity of oxyphos lines up perfectly with cannabis in terms of a timeline. It's got a 21-day residual activity in the plant. So if you guys are able to spray your mother plants before you take your cuttings are going to have 21 days to root out. They're going to do that. Hit it once or twice in veg, depending on how long your cycle is. Hit it when you flip, week 3, week 6. Assuming you guys are running that 9-week flower cycle, you're going to have that ISR response elicited from propagation all the way to harvest. So again, much less instances of things like powdery mildew, botrytis, pythium, even insects, because of the fact that that plant's already going to be in a defensive posture. When we think about how nature works, when there's a lion going after a herd of gazelles, it never goes after the happy, healthy one. It's always the sick one, the weak one, the old one. And so if we can kind of eliminate that in our garden and not have a weak one in the herd, we're not going to have that, beacon for pests and disease to try to find their way in. It's got a unique double action that allows growers to clean their leaf surface and get that systemic response with one application. It targets the root of that problem, like I said. Gives you that 21-day of residual activity. And the other thing that is kind of an off-label, but it is pertinent, is potassium phosphide is PK. So when you guys are using this in the flower phase, there are actually some bloom boosters on the market that contain potassium phosphide. So not only are you going to have that fungal antagonization from that ISR response, but you're going to have a extra amount of PK that plant can possibly utilize, and it can, there is the potential to increase your dry weight and have a better harvest. Our Sanidate 5.0 is the commercial cleaner, sanitizer, and disinfectant. If you are a commercial grower, this is what you need to be cleaning your facility with so that you can adhere to those food safety standards and not have to worry about that retroactive enforcement. It is a 5% peroxyacetic acid concentration. Again, it's got a 1 hour REI. Nicest thing about this product, though, is that it's no rinse and there's no residue. So there's less man hours that actually go into doing that. If you guys put something on the walls that you have to rinse off, not only do you have to touch it twice, but if you've got a dirty water column, we potentially just re-inoculated our grow with bad bacteria. Sorry. Our TerraGrow is our soil inoculant and plant health promoter. It reduces transplant stress. It's an easy-to-use wettable powder, and it colonizes roots very, very well. It's a conglomeration of 5 different strains of bacillus, kelp, and humic acid. 3 of the bacillus that are in there are known fungal antagonists, so we're going to have a biological protection against certain things that could find its way into the root zone. But we also add a strain of bacillus known as Lycoformis and a strain known as Maggitarium. Those are known for nitrate reduction, phosphate fixation. So when we couple that in with the humic acid component from the TerraGrow, we can ensure that we're using all that base nutrition. There's never anything that's going to be locked up or unavailable, because with that bacillus and that humic present, we're squeezing the last drops out, so to speak. It's going to allow you to maximize your base nutrition. We also throw some Acephalia nodosum extract in there. Anybody that's messed with kelp knows that it can increase your plant's vigor exponentially because of the cytokinins, auxins, and gibberellic acid that kelp has. It grows in the bottom of a very unhospitable environment. It's dark, it's cold, it's not where plants usually are, but it's green. So that tells you that it photosynthesizes. When we can give those components to a plant that's got ample nutrition and a good environment, they bang. So kelp is definitely another good additive to the formulation, and we've found that altogether it works very, very well. For container gardening, I am a fan of bacillus over something like mycorrhiza, only because if you're feeding chelated nutrition, like our boys at Front Row, the mycorrhiza is never really going to establish itself, because the plant basically, during the day when it's photosynthesizing and creating carbohydrates and sugars, it translocates those into the root zone at night in the form of exudates. And the microbial activity in the root zone lives off those carbs and sugars and mines insoluble nutrition for the plants. And that's how that symbiosis occurs. But if you got stuff that's readily available and the mycorrhizae never really needs to mine anything for that plant to be able to uptake it, how much benefit do you really get from it? If you guys are growing in raised beds, if you guys are growing in a field, mycorrhiza is an awesome option for you. If you're in a container and you're going to throw that media away in 15 weeks, bacillus might be a better option.